The very interesting conversation that I have for you guys here today is an update. Update, you say? Yes, it's an update. We're going to get into that in a quick second. But it comes by way of the podcast with Rocsi Diaz. You guys remember Rocsi from back in the day? 106 and Park. I believe that she came after Free, but somewhere in the middle of that was the person sitting over to the left of her, which was Julissa. Now, these lovely young Latina women have maintained a friendship in all of this time, have done podcasts together. But within this podcast that was uploaded 2 months ago, they talked about family, regrets, not having children up to the age of 40 years old, things that they would have done better, choosing career over family. So we're going to get exceptionally active on it. But again, it's an update. I actually did this content 2.5 years ago. Title of this video of them two just talking. Rocsi from 106 and Park is 40 and single and regrets choosing career over family. So I want to be able to go through this content. By the way, I'll leave a link to that video down in the description box down below in case you want to check out the whole thing. But I wanted to get into this conversation because I find it fascinating to watch beautiful women who have made it up to 40 years in age talk about things that they would have done differently, specific to dating men in relationships, what they got wrong, what they got right, especially because they're beautiful, because you already know they have a ton of suitors knocking on their door, but for some reason are unable to retain these suitors. I wonder why. So the first place that their conversation goes revolves around regret not having kids or settling early. Let's get exceptionally active on this one. So without further ado,
Are discussed during our tenure back then. Is it something that you regret?
Not having kids?
Not having kids yet, or not maybe like having settled down already by now?
So when it comes to that, I gotta be honest, I'm a little delulu, as they say. I really am. I still am. I'm 40 years old now, and one day I wake up when I see all of my friends' beautiful kids, and I think I show up as best as I can as an auntie. But yeah, some days I really do feel like, is that a missing piece of the puzzle? And then other days I feel completely complete, and that's okay too. And I really don't want to fall into the, and then you get the comments too.
Yeah.
It's like, girl, what's wrong with you? You're at this age and you don't have a man and you don't got kids. Like there must be something wrong with you. It's like, well, maybe I don't show that aspect of my life, because I don't. I really haven't shown that part on my social media, and I don't really think people care that much.
Right.
But besides the few comments. And also, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole of thinking that my life is not going to be complete if I don't have kids and this and that and, the family and the dog and the whole thing,
First off, I think it's so important here to call out that you could tell by the way that she's talking between her family and her culture, especially within the Latin culture, they highly prioritize family. And you could sort of hear the disappointment in her voice as she says that, hey, listen, I just got to be the auntie for right now. But then what does she say on top of that? I'm 40 and delulu. Meaning that her standards or requirements for a man are so inflated, her expectations are so high that she can't create the family that she's always wanted. And it's honestly sad to watch her try to convince herself into that's not something that she actually wanted. But that's the modern woman logic. When they get old enough in age, they begin to back into a logic that substantiates the current life and future life that they're going to be living. To have nationwide appeal as well as the oogling eyes of millions of men everywhere and not being able to lock down one is wild work. Let go.
Well, I want to know more about, you were close though. Really close at one time.
Yes,
you dodged. I don't know if you would call it dodging the bullet.
Yeah, I would say that.
Okay.
Which, by the way, that feels like a lifetime ago. Okay, I was engaged at 24 years old, and I think I even forget sometimes. I swear, Rocsi, is like so long ago.
Looking back at it then, knowing now, would that have been the best decision for you? And how much would your life have changed had you said yes or went through with that marriage at 24? And do you think that it's actually better to wait as a woman, to wait later in life to decide whether you want marriage and kids?
Well, I certainly would say, kids are a miracle. We know this. So the timing, I don't think is ever going to be right. And from the friends that I have that do have kids, they'll tell you. But my life would have been completely different. I don't think that I would look as youthful as I look. I consider myself to look pretty good for my age. I don't know if that would have been the case because in retrospect, you don't know what you don't know. And I think with age, I've just acquired way more information, not just information, but about myself. And yeah, the things that if I were the day of tomorrow, have a child, the things that I would be teaching that child now versus back then, oh man, the level of growth you can't even compare.
My G's out there. This is why you should never be embarrassed to walk up and talk to a pretty girl. Why? Because I have found throughout my field studies that the prettiest women that are around us deal with the most amount of insecurities about what they look like. It is wild to me that one of the first things her mind went to when asked about regrets for not having kids is how her face would have looked if she did have kids. Wow. Now that weird statement aside, I'm not mad at her follow-up statement in saying that she could teach a kid something better now than she could when she was younger, but I do think that thought is still a cop-out of what she wanted to become, a mother. Dreams deferred. But because of the state of her delulu, she's now reached a stage where that is way more difficult to do. I mean, geriatric pregnancy starts around 35-ish years old, so that's when complications are higher risk.
Something that I've been thinking about more and more as a 34-year-old woman is how like certain things that I'm able to do biologically are coming to an end.
Oh, sure.
Specifically like the ability to have children. And I've always been very like, I don't want kids. This is not for me. I've never had that desire to be a mother or to have a family in that sense. But more and more I'm thinking like, am I going to be looking back on my life as like a 45 or 50-year-old woman and going like, you should have done that.
And then even though you've been staunch in your choice, that doesn't mean that you won't change your mind. It's right. One of those things where it's like, okay, and then what do you do then? Like,
or like, what if I'm like 42 and I'm like, I really want kids.
You can buy one.
I guess you could.
You should buy one.
Just
store-bought's fine. It's fine.
Store-bought's fine.
Yeah.
Although there's been major medical advances in conception post 35 years of age, there's still a pregnancy time window, and men don't have that time window. Women do. And I do not envy that time allotment because it puts women under the shot clock. But MTR, what about just freezing your eggs? Well, they actually bring that up next.
In the industry, our families, we come from traditional Latin backgrounds where we would have already had a kid, been married, dropped, we didn't get a choice. My mom always said, you're going to have to choose one. It's either your career or your family. I felt like I've had to choose my career.
Yeah.
Now we don't have to do that.
Right.
Now we can be more open and the industry is a lot more forgiving. So with that said, it's something that I definitely look forward to maybe one day, but it's not going to make or break me anymore. I don't have the same stress as I did.
You could breathe.
Exactly. I'm cool with it. It's like kind of like.
Do you want kids?
Me?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not opposed. Si Dios quiere. If I get one, okay. If I don't,
you froze your eggs, right?
Huh?
You froze your eggs.
You
started the process.
I started the process, then didn't go through with the process. I was with the relationship, and then I thought we were going to go all the way through and do it, and then he ended up.
Yeah, one thing I that was a takeaway that you straight up called me one day, or I don't know who called who, but we were just catching up, and you were like, "Mija, don't be wasting your time out here."
Don't. And
ever since then, I gave myself a timeline.
So do you have? With that, well, I'm glad I told you that. Don't waste your time. Because now you got 6 months before I'm like, hey, moving on to the next situation. I'm not sticking around at all.
6 months from pogo stick to pogo stick, baby. Now, what's also interesting about that is they had a conversation about freezing their eggs 2+ years ago.
Pretty in your 30s, your mid-30s, your early 30s. If you do want to eventually have children, do look into the investment of freezing your eggs. I should have done it way earlier. I'm in the process of doing that.
Are you currently doing that?
Well, I've started the process, of doing it.
I feel like I want to do that.
It's definitely something that is very, very realistic and that women should really, really do. It's so funny because I went and filled in at E one day and Kim Whitley, the comedian Kim Whitley was there, and we just had a little sit down, and she was like, Roxy, the best advice I'll ever give you as a woman in this industry, she's like, freeze your eggs, honey. And do it for you, don't do it for somebody else, don't do it, not about him or or whatever. It might not even be him that you're with, you know, that you decide to have children with. It might just be you on your own wanting to have a child.
Right.
But freeze your eggs and do it for you. So I always said by the time I turn 40, if I haven't done it yet, I got to do it. So I'm doing it.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet. I am heavily thinking about it, and you're just reconfirming that.
Yeah.
So
it's the investment.
Siri,
of your
remind
life.
me to freeze my eggs.
I'll make a note.
But
And it's not an easy process at all. Egg
Yeah, it involves a lot of
retrieval,
shit.
You having to shoot your. I mean, women, we handle so much. Like I saw a video on Instagram of a woman carrying her 3 triplets, all of them up the stairs, 2 carriages here, 1 here, just. You know, we're super
Sounds like she needs a
women
man.
At the end of the day, women do so much, but the process of having to freeze your eggs and do the egg retrieval and taking the shots and this, it's not comfy.
to your point.
So if I was there, here's one of the questions that I would ask is it worth it? I mean, you self-admittedly say that you were having a mental breakdown as you almost hit your 40s, but like I would ask, is the path that you led up to this point and the money that you've accumulated, is it worth the mental breakdowns that you've self-admittedly had versus not going the path of being so career-oriented? And here's the thing is that many modern women today have been convinced that they can do both. The thing is that your career will get into the way, and you can see it right here. Like I'm sure these women are very well paid in what they do, but it's because they fought to get where they are. Now, if you look at from a wage gap perspective and you still see that, you know, women make some odd percentage up on a dollar compared to men, well, a lot of it has to do with them making concessions in their life for life that they are bringing into the world. But if you want to stay on it, you want to stay competitive, then there's very few concessions that you can make. But I wonder, here's what I would ask, was it worth it? Because it says something about the modern culture today when she has mentors in her life that just say, freeze your eggs, as opposed to slow your career path down a bit to make yourself more appealing for a man. All right, let's keep going. And now watching their updated comments, they've answered that question that no, it was not worth it. But I think that it's dope that women, popular women too, that have these platforms that are aging can talk about these real life things because they have been impacted by a lot of these cultural influences. And a lot of them came from feminism. And the hope is that there's women out there that see futures like this. And instead of hearing the girl boss, big boss career and all of the positives of that, they begin to hear from others that are being truthful about their want of always having a family. But if mindsets like the former continue, then we're going to lead into a consistently declining birth rate.
According to the CDC, 3.6 million babies were born in 2023 in the U.S. That's about 76,000 fewer than the previous year and the lowest one-year tally since 1979. Joining us with the economic implications of the declining U.S. birth rate, Melissa Kearney is an economics professor at the University of Maryland. Good morning to you. You know, somehow every story relates back to Elon Musk one way or another, and this is an issue that he's been talking about for quite some time, Melissa. How bad is it, and when do we have to really start worrying about it?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me on, Andrew. So it's actually quite likely that in the not too distant future, the global population is going to decline. But in the U.S., we're facing a shrinking working age population pretty imminently. So I think that's something that we need to be worried about. You know, our working age population has been stagnant for a while. Births in the U.S. have been falling persistently and precipitously since 2007. And I don't see any reason to think they're going to turn around.
If you were going to do something about that, what would it be?
So unfortunately, the lesson we can learn from other high-income countries that have been expressly experimenting with pro-natalist policies really reveals that economic tinkering, some tax credits here or there, extended parental leave, that's not going to do it. So I think if what we want to do is just, hold steady birth rates, even at the low level they are, or turn them around to increase them, it's going to take a real big investment in families in this country, a lot more support, financial support, things that make it easier for parents to combine having kids and working, really a dramatic reorientation of society toward a more family-friendly society. Short of that, we have to think about how to. I mean,
we've been going the last 100 years the other direction, though. So, do you think there's a political? So it would have to be a political will almost. What would be a good country to take to look at as an example of a country that's turned this the right direction?
Yeah, so this is actually a really interesting point. I think this is why this major challenge has snuck up on us, is because people have had in mind since the 1960s this misguided worry about overpopulation. So you're right, people have been celebrating declines in birth rates, and now all of a sudden we're starting to realize that that's actually going to be really bad for our fiscal situation and our economic dynamism. You know, who's turned it around? Japan has managed to stall the decline in birth rates. It's still birth rates in Japan are still so low that they're far below replacement level. I suppose they haven't fallen out quite as far as South Korea. They've spent 4 times as much in terms of share in their GDP on pro-family policies in recent decades. France has managed to throw a lot of support at this problem and, again, stalled out their fertility decline, but still far below replacement level. I can't really point to an advanced economy that has turned around declining fertility rates. That's the issue here. So I think what we have to think about is, if we're facing an aging population, a shrinking age working population, how do we invest in a talent pipeline when there are just simply fewer workers around? That's going to take a big investment in human capital.
Hey, I just wonder what those moves are that companies do, or that countries do, that you think are successful. I mean, when you think of Japan as the example to this, they're doing more and more to try and get women in the workforce. It's hard to boost your birth rate at the same time you're trying to get women to come into the workforce, especially in a workforce where there aren't enough days off. There's a very serious long day that goes along with that. What are countries doing that helps? Is it spending more on childcare so that women can work and have kids? Is it doing more to pay people to stay home? I mean, it's a complicated question. And when you push on one lever, you inevitably wind up with a problem on the other side.
It's such a fantastic question. But to think of the global impact, actually, let's just talk about the national impact of pushing feminist ideology to the forefront could be such that it's causing a low birth rate. Interesting.
Yeah, let me be clear. I don't think there's any country we can point to that's been particularly successful at this. So what have countries tried doing? Much more extended paid leaves than the U.S. has. Really generous child supports. If we look at Scandinavia, though, women there are still having below 2 kids on average. And so even the most generous countries in terms of the kind of supports they give parents and working parents are faced with below replacement level fertility. The issue of women working is really interesting. A majority of women work now across advanced economies, about 80%. So we shouldn't really think about women either having and raising kids or working. And I think the right way to think about any sort of pro-natalist policy is things that make it easier for parents to combine work and having kids.
So to conclude all of that, we have an unprecedented population implosion. And you can see from a macroeconomic lens the potential disruption to our GDP that it will cause in the coming years. Having less people in the workplace means less production, which is a problem for our economy. So it's really interesting watching these economic discussions and trends and then comparing it to women's dating woes or their decision, or maybe it's not their decision to not have children, but the rate of single women within our society is increasing. I mean, rate of single men is increasing as well. But the single woman rate should be more alarming. Why? Because they are the ones that harbor life for 9 months, and they are the ones that are on the shot clock. If you're on an island all by yourself, you're 1 man, 9 women, that population is going to grow way faster than 1 woman, 9 men. Understand? But that has been your video. I have been your grateful host, Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews. Guys, drop me some comments down below. What do you guys think about the content that we saw in the beginning of Rocsi and Julissa? You remember watching them? What do you guys think about the economic forecast at the end? Leave me your thoughts down below. It seems like the economics professor couldn't answer the question, but maybe some of the geniuses in my audience will. What are some things that we can do in order to help the birth rate decline? I would love to see some of your comments below. But until next time, YouTube, peace.